Um, Science, technology, invention, and innovation has been an integral part of the prehistoric person, hence integral to the tropical Africa, and indeed the evolution of humanity, with Africa being seen as the most strategic in the history of science, technology, and innovation globally. There is every reason for runners to embrace a renaissance and eventually embrace creativity and innovation as the magic that will catapult Africa from the periphery to the mountaintops of greatness, with Africa originating some of the unique technological innovations for human survival, such as tool making industry. You can refer to stone, bone, and iron tools, plus calendar invention, stool tool that traces its roots from 2.3 million BCE, when Homo habilis resided in East Africa and who made their first tool-making industry called Odwan, which spread to Middle East and Europe from 800,000 to 600 BCE, or before Christ was born, or before Common Era. It is critical to recall and learn from such ancestral geniuses that appeared in Africa many years ago. As a matter of fact, Africa will remain in the annals of history as a continent where the Paleolithic Africans began a process of stargazing in their innovative bid for calendar invention 40,000 years ago. Thus, if the investigation into space and time began in Africa, then science, technology, and innovation, which falls within both the Millennium Development Goals and the current Sustainable Development Goals, has to be seen, heard, and be practiced today like never before. And within the framework of the 21st Century Skills Movement in education. So it is very important to recall that if the Nilotic lands of Africa championed their observational science systematically in their stargazing and are indeed the basis for the modern astronomy and calendar invention, we therefore have every reason to build strong faith in science and technology, creativity, innovation, and invention as the solution to African problems. So the more people in Africa get more technological, more creative, more innovative, and more inventive, the more we are likely to progress as a people, as a continent, as a race, as a people, and move up front. For if it succeeded earlier, though under difficult circumstances, then in post-industrial revolution times and in the era of the modern science and technology, that it can now do even much better. If it survived, this technological innovativeness, invention was there in ancient Africa. What about today, in post-colonial times, in globalized world? It can do better because people have good transport network, have good communication gadgets like phones, like internet, computers, travel by air, fast, by boats, and by ships. It is now much easier to make Africa move using the progression of what we were that time and what we are today, where we have the advantage of being together with the rest of the global community. So science, technology, and innovation have been an integral part of the prehistoric human and thus integral to Africa and the evolution of humanity. Documented evidence suggests that Africa is amongst the most strategic continent in the history of science, technology, and innovation. So and that's global. That's a global. It's looking at it from a global perspective. Africa has been there globally in these things, though they have come in different colors, different styles, but they were there. Interestingly, some of the most important technological innovations for human survival have unique origins in Africa. Now, a review of the tool-making industries, stone tool, bone tool, iron tool, corridor invention, proto-technology, and sustainable development will help in understanding this. You can look at tool-making industry briefly, because this may refer to stone tool, bone, and iron tools. First, stone tool. It has its root in Africa in around 2.3 million or 2,300,000 BCE. Homo habilis, who are residing in East Africa, developed the first tool-making industry called Odwan. Following this, the Acheulean stone tool industry, which was characterized by the hand axe, emerged in Africa in 1,500,000 BCE and spread to Middle East and Europe between 800,000 to 600,000 BCE or BC. Number two is bone tools, mentioned it. A significant development which influenced all later stone tool industry is the creation of bone tools and black brains in southern and eastern Africa between 90,000 to 60,000 BCE or BC. The fourth one is iron tool. That is the use of iron in smelting and forging of tools. It appeared in West Africa around 1200 BCE, making it the first birthplace of the Iron Age. Before 1800, Africa's methods of extraction were employed in Brazil until more advanced European methods were instituted much later. Now, copper smelting developed independently in West Africa in around the year 900 BCE. So you can see the more we are coming close to BC, or what we have been calling AD, the more the figure, the smaller the figure shows, it's coming very close to our times. But remember, the year 900 CE or AD is just more or less the other day. If you consider that we were talking about 90,000 BCE, we are now talking about 900 AD or CE. The fifth one is calendar invention. It is worth noting, or it is worthwhile to remember that investigation into space and time also began in Africa. Paleolithic Africans began a process of stargazing as far back as 40,000 years ago. And in the Paleolithic period, roughly 2.5 million years ago to 10,000 BC or BCE, other humans lived in caves or simple huts or were hunters and gatherers. They used basic stone and bone tools as well as crude stone axes for hunting bands and wild animals. It is During the era of Paleolithic Africans, that the process of star gazing that took place 40,000 years ago was transformed into a systematic observational science in the Nilotic lands of Africa. And between 6,000 and 12,000 years ago, it had made significant progress. Now, the most important result of this Nilotic star gazing was the invention of what we have today as calendar and the basis for the modern astronomy. The sixth one is proto-technology. Now, the proto-technology of the modern world is traceable to the iron ore mining 43,000 years ago in Southern Africa and the emergence of pro-mathematics from the Africa's Great Lakes region over 25,000 years ago. From these humble beginnings, science and technology underwent a steady development in Africa, with the continent reputed to be the remotest origin of formal mathematics, astronomy, engineering, architecture, navigation, and map making. The recent discoveries of the Timbuktu manuscript rekindled confidence that sub-Saharan Africans were studying mathematics and astronomy. And you know, astronomy is the studying of everything in the universe beyond Earth's atmosphere. That includes objects we can see with our naked eyes, like the sun, the moon, and the planets, and even the stars. That is astronomy. At least over 300 years ago. Other discoveries also record that there were advanced concepts of modern physics in Mali, North Africa, Mali. In view of this, we can confidently say that Africa had great beginnings in the role of shaping global science and technology. Critically important is to consider that the current state of science, technology, and innovation in Africa raises several concerns. First, the tide has since changed towards a new world order in which scientific knowledge and modern technologies are largely produced in the global north and consumed by the global south, with Africa's productivity in science, technology, and innovation ranking amongst the lowest globally. Okay? So the point is, we need to invest in science, technology, and innovation without apologies. Whatever area of study, we need to think of science, technology, and innovation as critical pillars of the future of the continent. Also follow the same pattern. So investment again in science, technology, and innovation also follow the same pattern, with the South Africa approaching the African Union. The African Union recommended target of 1% of GDP of public expenditure. I mean GDP, not GDP, of GDP of public expenditure on research and development in the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. Kenya is currently at 0.5% of the GDP, although it is expected to reach 2% of the GDP according to the Science, Technology and Innovation Act of 2013. We are saying that South Africa has led in promoting science, technology, and innovation. So far, it's leading. Of course, there are other countries like Algeria and particularly Egypt that have done also very well. The seventh point is sustainable development. What is it? Let's understand what is sustainable development. Because when you want to be creative, when you want to be innovative, you are aiming at something. You are not just becoming just aimless, giving or providing aimless or tactless creativity. Creativity has to be geared towards improving oneself or the targeted country or something. Now, we must define sustainable development. So we must appreciate that indigenous resources and or indigenous technology is necessary for Kenya or Africa's sustainable development. So when you use indigenous technology or indigenous resources or indigenous creativity, indigenous innovation, or any form of creativity generally and innovativeness, the agenda is to provide development that is sustainable, not the development that goes with one president. Another one comes and goes with it. And probably that's why Obama said, Africa needs strong institutions, not strong men, and probably strong women leading these countries. In other words, Obama was like saying, we don't want the big man syndrome. Whether you are in the church, whether you are in political arena, whether you are in a university, you don't need those big men syndrome. Encourage people to be creative and sustain themselves creatively and critically and inventively and innovatively. All that. That's what is sustainable. If everybody is empowered, we can sustain that growth. It is not development where one man comes with 5 million dishes to us and then goes. No, that is not sustainable development. What there is there, it is pseudo development, where it's one or few people who are 10 billionaires amidst 54 million beggars in a country. That's a failed state. Think of indigenous medicine, the aloe vera, ginger, and other medicinal plants that have been critical in supplementing COVID-19 effects and other ailments. Such are critical for sustainable development. The challenge here is to exploit the full potential of science and technology and innovation through generation, protection, preservation, evaluation, updating, adding value to, and utilizing the extensive indigenous resources and traditional knowledge as applicable to national development. This can be done through evaluating and updating of the extensive indigenous resources and traditional knowledge and promoting partnership between the government, the private sector, the non-government organization, and other stakeholders. In other words, in development, in sustainable development, every participant is like in drama. Everybody is important in drama. When you are laughing, laughter is part of drama. Acting is part of drama. Spectating is part of drama. Everybody is part of it. And part of it. So in sustainable development, everyone is a stakeholder. This will eventually enhance utilization of indigenous resources and traditional knowledge, which results with good results for national development that are Kenyan in origin and character. Now, critically important to sustainable development is environmental preservation. First, indigenous Africans and diverse way of preserving the environment through cautioning proverbs, sayings, through sayings, through oral narratives and taboos. They would put taboos that will enforce the way we put police force enforcers or enforcers of the law to ensure that certain law or rule or custom is observed in a people. So there were taboos to do that. There were oral narratives to educate people on certain ways of preserving our environment, our development, our lives. There are also proverbs to caution, to advise, to add into the wisdom of the community. Second, the important contribution that African indigenous ways of environmental preservation can make to poverty reduction has been recognized. So environmental management and preservation was also geared towards poverty eradication in indigenous Africa. Eradicating extreme poverty and hunger is one of the most important goals of Millennium Development Goals and even the Sustainable Development Goals. that are currently the focus of the international development agenda. So this agenda was in ancient Africa, though in a different way, a different approach, different sounding, because of the advancement of science and technology makes it look like it is something new that has come to the global community, but it was there, the indigenous Africa, how to sustain development and not have people disappearing with the leadership. You go with the leadership. Now, other goals relate to improving education and health, empowering women, and ensuring environmental sustainability. Now, in the local Kenyan context, the local Vision 2030, which has set out the national goals before the year 2030, and the Poverty Reduction Strategy Papers, PRSPS, Poverty Reduction Strategy Papers, promoted by the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, depict how governments may work with donors to attain the Millennium Development Goals, now discredited. Now we have Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. However, even in the forest-rich countries, the forestry sector gets little attention in the Poverty Reduction Strategy Papers, and the lack of PRSPS, and the lack of examination of the links between poverty and the use of forest resources means that forest policy recommendations are rarely based on hard evidence. Thus, the concern for ecology is critical as humanity, as world religions insist on this concern, has gone away. Now, the doctrine of dominion, that's Genesis 2, for those who read the Bible. Of course, the Quran has something close to that, or more or less the same. Entrust humanity with the stewardship of the earth, the trees, the animals, the valleys, the hills, and the natural habitat in general. And indeed, the concern for the environment is a fundamental area in the post-colonial reconstruction of Africa. For in terms of biodiversity, Africa is more than the picture postcards of giraffes and gazelles, gnu, and other animals. Yes, it is beyond there. Yeah, it is beyond there. Otherwise, we can't say that Africa is just that. It's beyond there. It's beyond the animals that we talk about. Okay? The diversity is beyond those animals we see in the picture postcards of gnu, gazelle, giraffe, and so on. It's a home to thousands of endemic species of plants and animals, with the deserts, with the mountains, with the savanna forests, with wetlands, which provide unique biomes for species ranging from antbirds to zebras. Interestingly, some of these species are found nowhere else on the planet. We are very lucky in Africa. We have a lot of unique things that are not anywhere, which can be capitalized on. It's so that we are not just preserving the environment, we are also preserving sustainable development. We are also sustaining our economies through many things, tourist industries and all that. Now, in the 21st century, of course, even seeing the creation of God, celebrating what God created through this biodiversity. Now, in the 21st century Africa, the increase in the use of pollutants in the environment, for example, biodegradable, radioactive, etc., is common. In East Africa, general destruction, effluents, and pollutants, poor air quality, congestion, noise, dirt, and grime are all too common. In African churches today, we see priests baptizing with polluted water. Yes, because if you pollute the environment, even the water that you use to baptize people, could need to be cleansed as well. Unless we take action to reverse the current trend where environmental degradation is the order of the day, we shall suffer together with the rest of the creation. Of course, all this calls for a lot of creativity, even for young men, even for students like you, that you take action whenever you see the environment being messed. You remember it will affect you indirectly. We have used the case of people baptizing with the polluted water. Is it clean even before God? Those are some of the ethical questions you may want to pursue, not for this class. But you can continue on and on, you can push it further and see whether that's the way to go. To this end, everyone in African indigenous society had and has the natural responsibility to be stewards of the Mother Earth, to tend its trees for the Mother Earth, to tend its valleys, to tend its hills, to tend its rivers, and rehabilitation and habitation. A phenomenon which compares with the psalmists, those who have read the book of Psalms, which assert that the environment belongs to God and all that there is in it, it belongs to Him, Psalm 24:1. Certainly, there are African proverbs, riddles, taboos, as I said earlier, sayings that prescribe how the pre- and post-European African society preserved the environment. Andrew Kiomo builds on this when he says, there is a proverb in my tribe. I don't use the word tribe myself. I use my ethnic group, because tribe means primitive person. But let me quote Kiomo as he says, Andrew Kiomo. There is a proverb in my tribe that says, the forest is our skin, and if one removes the skin of a human being, the result is death. Death is at the door. We do witness a shortage of rain because the climate is affected by the destruction of the environment. People are no longer bound to a traditional African worldview. Modernization is dominant to the extent that the culture of profit and money is made to have priority over humanization. Money as a thing is above the worth of a human being. In such a situation, life is threatened by death. End of quote from Andrew Kiomo. Now, let me continue by saying that Africans preserved the environment, as we have just now noted, and this is common knowledge. They preserved the environment by first designating or classifying trees in their bid to show their respective importance. That is, some were classed as building trees referred to or Brooderia micrantha, medicinal trees such as Mokoigo, the same tree again, Brooderia micrantha, Moiri or Prunus africana. There were some that were called poisonous trees, such as Rosago, also called Mysopsis eminini. Mysopsis eminini, whose dust, Muguruka, made people bright. So close your eyes. Trees that mark the boundaries include Mo or Mankaima rutea, Mogoya, Precranthus barbatus, Cariaria, Euphorbia tilukali, also called finger euphorbia. Of course, there are more. I want to add a few more so that we get more and more informed. Yes, there is also Musimoro or Rantana Kamala. That one marked the boundary. There are also trees that provided or provide today detergents. Of course, people have put perimeter walls everywhere. But the trees used to be the ones that would do that, like the ones I've just mentioned. But with the so-called globalization, there are a lot of challenges with it. Because as people use trees for demarcating land and, of course, differentiating this land and versus the other, a lot of things are happening, and a lot were happening rather in terms of environmental preservation, and in actual fact, this creativity of sustainable development. Or sustainable development is creatively done through the type of fencing that was done using those trees. Some of them were medicinal, some of them were just for demarcating our gardens, our little, or marking the boundaries. There were some that provided detergents for washing. You may refer to Mo, or again Mankaima rutea, and others as sacred trees refer to Mogumo or Ficus donigi, Moroli or Trichilia emetica var. Some trees were regarded as sources of material culture, and one was around to use more trees on the fringes of the forest for purposes of making material culture items such as farming sticks, miro crabs, walking sticks, among others, provided, or as long as no human-made tools were used in the process. However, under no circumstances could one use wood from the sacred trees for house building or other things. It was a sacred tree. In the era of science, technology, and innovation, the indigenous way of preserving an environment must be given a fresh look in order to establish its viability in sustaining development. You may ask, was there any relevant creativity in these indigenous resources that can take us forward? Those are some of the questions we may want to ask, and that can also inform. Let's see some comment now.